Hi, I'm Paul Camillos and welcome to Shooting the Breeze. Join me and the STB crew for Series 8. Just hit that subscribe button and if you enjoy the pod, share it and give it a like. While we're taking a short pod break, we've got some of our biggest 2025 podcast replays queued up for your Aussie summer enjoyment. For the full podcast, make sure to go back and listen to the episode, and you can subscribe to Shooting the Breeze wherever you get your podcasts.
We only know our own experience, right? So we know our own age group pretty much. But when you look at the way we view the world and what we grew up with, and then you look at the way, for instance, my three boys, they're all adults now, but let's say, in their 20s, the way they view it and the way their friends view it is very different. And I think they are more tapped into the future of the world, what's good for the world, that sport doesn't exist in this bubble anymore and you'll take what we serve up. They're like, oh no, how come the sport I like isn't doing anything about, I don't know, what's going on in Israel or Gaza or, pick anything. They're willing to tap into these other bigger stories and to try and find a link. And I think that might change what they expect and what they demand, because we know also they're not afraid of hooking up together as a group and pressuring sponsors, saying, how come you're still sponsoring this sport when this is going on? And I think they're quite key to what's going to happen in the future and how sports maintain their status or their reputation.
True. They're so more clued in and environmentally aware, etc. I think they also, and look, studies have shown that Gen Z in particular, they really want an experience from something. They look at that experience, and I think, this is where the NBA, sorry, we go back to the US again. I mean, they've just been at that intersection of pop culture for so long and leading the way in that regard and always keeping that young audience engaged. And you mentioned your son being a YouTuber. I think my son is a good consumer of the YouTube reels and everything that's going on, and just watching over his shoulder how much he's consuming about the NBA without having been a set fan of the NBA. He knows stuff about it, the key players, etc., and any kind of milestone events in the NBA because he's seen it on his YouTube. What he's consuming around YouTube, because they're just so right there, the NBA. I think, from an NBL and WNBL perspective, and Larry and the team that have built it up in the last decade have really made that game experience, the live game experience, something as good as possible within the confines of what they can afford. But that's a really important thing for both the NBL and WNBL moving forward, is that game experience. It will be vital in terms of keeping that young audience engaged.
Yeah, touching on that, the NBL, and I don't know if you guys saw the announcement, but Justin Nelson, who we've actually had on the podcast a couple of times, is coming back from New Zealand to the NBL. And I think one of his key focuses always has been fans and the fan experience and fan engagement, not only outside the game, but also once you've got them in the room where the game's being held, how you keep them engaged and keep them going, keep their interest going for the game. But I just want to go back one step for a second to something you mentioned, Lance, about the 11-year deal for the WNBA. Now, when that was first announced, a lot of people came out saying, this is not a good deal. The WNBA is worth so much more. But as you said, and I tend to agree with this, it's, if you look at it as a long-term play, what you've got is you've got a reasonable chunk of revenue coming in over a longer period. But that means there's stability for the sport in terms of a revenue stream that allows them to build on that, to be able to start to raise the profile of the game so that the next time they go into a deal, they've got other options.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole sort of longer roadmap piece is something that I think that's proven. You make a good point in terms of knowing what's coming in year on year. Again, cup half full. The advertising revenue and the things that you can build around that are incremental to that. So that number is just a great baseline for the clubs to know what they're working with, and then be able to, build out their own respective plans separate to the league.
And I'm curious to get your opinions on this. There's one thing that we haven't talked about so far, and that is the ability of sports to be able to create their own broadcast platforms with, using the OTT technology that's available now. And I'm going to touch on F1 for a minute here. Formula One has got its own OTT platform, which is subscription-based, and has, my understanding is, it's got a reasonable base, even though they still do go out to broadcasters. Do you think that the ability of it to get an OTT platform stood up fairly quickly and fairly inexpensively is a viable option for some of those sports that really don't get a look in with the broadcasters, whatever type of broadcaster we're talking about?
Case for you, Lance.
Fair enough. Look, I do have a position on this. I think if you look at some of the tier 1, tier 2 sports, they generally use that approach for markets where they're dark and they can't do a deal. So that would suggest that, potentially it is a way to go for sports that are trying to carve out, a broadcast offering. There are smaller players in Australia that are covering, because it's so easy to cover, club events now. There is so much more that can be covered. I'm trying to remember the name of the, is it Pitch TV or something that in Australia that does, sort of low tier sports and is able to push it out. I've got no idea what kind of numbers those do, but serving these niche audiences is vital for actually building any kind of offering. Something like, I remember looking years ago at equestrian, and obviously it's one of those things that is on the map every time the Olympics comes around, but there is, a good sort of 50 to 100,000 people engaged with that in Australia that we isolated as at different levels of engagement, people that own 5 to 8 horses, right through to people who just work with the sport and are just interested to observe it more outside the sort of Olympic window. So, look, it's definitely an approach that you can take, but again, right back to that roadmap, you've got to put in for a long haul and hopefully have some investment that can sustain you through those early years to build a strategy to take it forward.
So, Tracey, you raised Formula One, and Formula One's an interesting one because, as you said, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of bringing in new fans, but also Formula One recently were trying to sell their rights in the United States for, I believe it was $150 or $180 million a year window, but independently, it's been given a fair value of about $100 million. Now, they're not small numbers, whichever way you cut it. But the fact that Formula One is struggling to find someone to take the rights at the figure that they want, is that a bit of a canary in the coal mine in terms of, sports may have to reset their expectations for rights money?
I don't know, because I think we've been predicting the bursting of the sports broadcast bubble for a very long time, and it hasn't happened. We've seen it in every other sphere, but not in sport, and I think that tells you something about sport. But I also think with that F1 deal, weren't they seeking something that was about double their previous value? And, maybe they were just being a little bit greedy. Maybe they were seeing if they could push it a little bit further than the market would actually sustain. But no, I don't see the sports bubble bursting anytime soon because, you see it across, like I say, the bigger sports, and it filters down. And if the smaller sports can learn from what's happened at that end, because they're shifting quite quickly because they understand how the dynamic is changing, all the way through to, I was speaking to one of the women who was involved in marketing one of the WNBA teams, and she was saying how they made a concerted effort to just use social media to try and expand their markets in other places. And so they had a look at the China market. They had a look at who were the great influencers there. And one of the great female influencers was this woman who basically went around doing, little pieces to camera about food that she could pick up here and there. Okay. So they flew her across to the season launch, and all she did was talk about the food available on the sidelines of the WNBA encounter. And so they had their sort of, the five-star restaurant for the sponsors and what have you, and the private serving in the boxes, and then the local sort of cafe, but what was on offer there. And basically what she said was she was doing these live streams, and the club was watching numbers just going up and up and up and up like this. People signing on going, oh, yeah, we want to become the sort of, an overseas-based member of this team, and we're going to follow this team because of this influencer. And I mean, I thought that was like, what a fantastic story. Yeah. And anyone can tap into that because it's telling those other stories, and it's just finding ways of connecting dots instead of relying on the traditional base you have. Let's say basketball, okay? There's this audience there that are rusted on. They love women's basketball. They'll be turning up for every event. They tune in for every event. But what about all these parts of our society that may have never seen basketball? And I think one of the big things, this goes through to traditional broadcasters and all the way through, is that you need to start, when your sport, team, club, whatever, is represented in the media, it needs to look like the streets we walk in. And too much of our broadcasting in Australia still looks like 1970s Australia. And I hate to tell you, but the people who were sort of relevant in 1970, they're all dying. So Australia looks very different. It's a completely different landscape and makeup now. And I know one of my sons played basketball at school, and he played, representative basketball, went on a couple of tours to the US. And I just know going to basketball, these huge competitions that they'd have around Australia, that's not what I see when I look at the broadcasting of basketball or the reporting of basketball. And I think, what a wasted opportunity, because here's a market, it's already there, but we're not talking to them in the way we should be, or the way basketball should be.
The game in New Zealand has, especially in the women's space, has increased in the last couple of years, which has been fabulous to see. And so just being able, this is the first time that the Toll Ferns were home since 2019. So there was a lot going on around that. So, but then you also got to live it and, as we said earlier, be part of this new era, but then you got to see the fans come in. Just what was that like, watching these girls play at home?
Yeah, it was awesome. The day was awesome. The atmosphere was awesome. It was great that the guys came in and got a win, and then the crowd sometimes in Australia leaves for the women's game and didn't leave for our game, and was loud in our game and rode every momentum wave with us. And I know how proud the girls were to be back at home and playing in front of their home fans, getting to play in front of their families, which they haven't done, to get to wear our black jersey, which we love the white, but when we put the black on, there's a different feel. Like there's something about the black jersey that a little extra, pump up. They were tired. It was game 3, but we didn't look like it. So there was clearly something that drove us to be able to push ourselves for another 40 minutes. So we want that to happen more. We want to come home more and play on our home soil and play in front of our fans and continue to build the platform for the girls. And I know the Tauihi League is leading the way in that. And it's hard. We're trying to recruit back here for WNBL, and, players are leaving us and we're going to play in the New Zealand League, which is great. So it's making that tougher. And it's annoying, but it's also like at the same time, I'm like suck on both. Like, yes, go. Yeah. Play there, but there's but it's great. The girls are getting a choice. They're not just having to go there because they have to go there. There's some that have said no to playing here in Australia to go over to New Zealand. And I love that. And I love that it's being driven there, and it's getting better and better and better. The Tauihi League gets great imports. I want to see our New Zealanders play a little bit more, but they get great big name imports. So if we can continue to showcase, you know, our homegrown talent, the lat league's only going to get better, which is only going to help us. So, you know, the more court time, the more minutes they play, the connections, if they, you know, if there's, you know, squad members within teams, it's only going to help us get better. And yeah, it's tough. It's great that it's growing. Again, it's tough for back here, but I'm loving that. Like I said, the girls are getting choice to be pros, and they get to choose where they want to go, and I love that for them.
I just want to ask you something about that. You know, you were saying before that the Kiwi culture, you know, really hit for you, and now we're seeing that a lot of players are choosing to stay and play in New Zealand. Do you think that combination, the culture and actually staying and playing longer in New Zealand, is actually going to help create more bonds between the players that ultimately is going to be helpful to the Tall Ferns?
100%. Absolutely. And I don't know, rumours, I hear some of them going to play with each other at different teams. You know, Mel's with a team. We're even losing Aussies from here to go and play in New Zealand because, you know, one, the culture's great. It's a beautiful country. You know, the league's getting better. So, like I said, it's only going to get better. Do I want to see them playing more on the floor? Absolutely. I understand the rapid league's a great thing, and I really love that concept. But I think our talent is growing, that they've got to start getting more minutes in that league. I think they will. And I just think it's going to continue to help us grow. And it helps my job because they're improving over 3 months in tough competition, you know, against each other. So they're playing against each other, but they're also around each other as well, which is great as well.
Yeah, you're right. I think that development outside of what you can facilitate is really important for your future. And I think that's going to be probably quite key between now and your Asia Cup. And Asia Cup, notoriously a tough tournament. You know, there's no easy opposition in the Asia Cup. And then obviously there's a lot of pressure riding on the qualification coming from that. So what would you say are some like key takeaways from the Trans-Tasman? Hopefully you have more time to prepare. Realistically, probably not, to be fair. And then, I don't know what the squad is going to be like, but I guess in terms of style of play and things like that, what are some key takeaways?
Yeah, look, we want to continue to be physical defensively, I think, in the quarter court, but we want to, like I said before, extend that up the floor. I think we're mobile enough to be able to, I know we're mobile enough to be able to do that, because even our bigs are mobile. You know, we've got the likes of, you know, Ratoria coming back in, who she's 6'5", but that kid can move as well. So the style that we implemented wasn't just for Trans-Tasman. It's something that we want to continue to build on as we continue to bring or not bring. I don't know what the squad's going to look like in the next couple of years, players back in. The prep for Asia Cup, we will land in China and have a week. The selection, you know, process, we haven't gone through that yet. We'll be going through that, you know, this week, and, you know, hopefully we'll be able to announce our team in the next couple of weeks, which is, you know, exciting. What that looks like for us right now is it's up in the air because, you know, there's 3 different coaches, there's a convener, there's a panel, there's all that kind of stuff that we need to go through to make sure that we've got our process down pat. But again, we'll have a week, we'll add what we can, we'll do everything that we can. You know, I know all the girls that have been at Trans-Tasman, or we're looking to possibly be up for selection. They're all on strength and conditioning programs. They've all got their extra cardio. We're keeping tabs where they're playing right now. If they're not playing, what are they doing? So we've got a lot of, you know, fingers on lots of different places, lots of comms trying to happen now, because, you know, it's going to creep up, and we're going to be in China, and we're going to be at game 1 and hopefully prepped enough to, I know everyone says we just need to beat Indonesia, but I'm a lot more competitive than that, and we want to go for Korea in the first game.
Yeah, I love that, and I don't think that's far-fetched at all, and I think that would be such a great development for our country to see. And yeah, you're definitely not far off. Like you said, don't know who the squad's going to be, but I'd say that Trans-Tasman was a pretty good showing of, you know, what these guys can achieve, and what you can achieve as well. So yeah, I think a lot of encouragement for you. So how are you feeling like going into your first Asia Cup as a head coach? That must be slightly daunting, but you know, you've got a lot of backing behind you. Like I said, we've got full confidence in you, and from what the girls have said, they do as well.
Yeah, I think I'm excited, actually. I want to know, you know, I want to get our squad done. I want to, you know, even the ones that you know, don't come or miss out, or however you want to put it. It doesn't mean forever. It just means for right now. We're going to take the best squad that we know will get us to the next round, and that's exactly what we want to do. We're focused on getting to the next round. I'm nervous, but there's no point being nervous now. I just want to make sure that we get all the pre-prep, as much prep as we can get done. So that's just all I'm focused on, is making sure that I give everyone enough information or give them enough resources for right now to make sure that when we do land in China, we've only got a week, but we feel okay about that.
It's just really making the most out of the time that you can have, and knowing you're going to do everything you can control. As if it is international basketball, at the end of the day, you never know what can happen, but no doubt that you guys will go into it preparing as much as you can, doing as well as you can. I don't like to think nobody's going and thinking, oh, they're just going to do willy-nilly whatever, because that is certainly not the case. There's smart decisions behind it, and there's got to be, but there's lessons in a way, because even though, again, what's happened with the Trans-Tasman throwdown, there's a lot of learning lessons to be had there. So it's not like you guys are coming in with nothing. So now it's just kind of one more thing under your belt to take on board and say, okay, like, how can we work on that and then do with what we have, before we go to China.
Yeah, like I said, I think we laid not a bad foundation in the Trans-Tasman, something to build on. I think too, it goes to show that I want girls to make themselves available for the Ferns, whether it's a Trans-Tasman, a camp, an Asia Cup. I think it's going to be tougher as the next couple of years go on, because we do have, I think our depth chart is building out. We want to see these guys together. We want to get more camps where we do have an extended squad, because I feel like the talent pool is bigger and getting bigger and bigger, and these positions that these girls are fighting for are going to become tougher and tougher. So there is going to be that level of, we need to be doing the work outside, and that's just not the players. That's on us as well, to make sure that we give the girls enough resources to be able to put their best foot forward, one, to be selected, and two, to get to a tournament and feel like they're prepped as much as they can. So like I said, we laid a great foundation. We've got to now select the best squad that we feel like can get us to where we need to get to next, and we have to continue to build. It's just the start. We can't rest on, we push the opals. We push the opals, that's great, that's done now. We want to take the great feeling from that, but we can definitely are not resting on what we did a couple of weeks ago.
We were saying that we may have a special guest, and our special guest is here, Lara Hodges. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back. It's been a while.
It has been a while, but what a day in Adelaide, and for Basketball Australia and all the South Australians to witness the Opals back playing here. And it's been over 25 years since they've done that. And I was part of the Opals for 17 years. I had camps in Adelaide, but never got to play in Adelaide. So it is pretty special for the community and, in South Australia, because South Australians, they love basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I to be honest, when I heard it was 1999 that they last played here, I was really shocked. I would have thought for sure they would have played in Adelaide, after that.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy to think back to, I was at that game. I was a baby at that time, and I would have been 14 years old, and probably, not quite 15. And so I remember being at the Titanium Arena. I don't know what it's called now. I think it's called the Adelaide 36ers Arena, whatever it's called. But it's just, that's the kind of thing that inspires the younger generation. And I got to talk to the Opals last night and said that, like, to be in this arena, and it will be close to a sellout, and you are going to inspire so many people, and that's such a key thing. And before that, the Opals were in Adelaide in Oz 94.
Yep.
I was 10 years old, and I got to go to an Opals game, and I mentioned that. The fact that being in the stands, I was very lucky. My mum got 2 tickets. I've got 2 older sisters, and I was the lucky one picked out of the hat that I got to go. I just started playing basketball, and I missed out on training that night. And that's when it just to be able to watch those amazing athletes. And it was a game versus Italy. They had to win by a certain amount of points to then even qualify for the next round for them to go on to Sydney to then play the quarters. And I just remember them being ferocious. They were defenders. That's one of the things that I love about the Opals. You know, to be an Opal, you have to be able to defend the basketball. And if you don't do that, it's very rare that you're going to get into that side. So I just remember being in that stadium and just being so inspired. I was a netballer at the same time as a swimmer, and I just quickly went, stuff those two sports. I want to play basketball, and that's what I want to do. So I think if you don't have stories like that and to show this is what you can do for the next generation coming through, it's pretty special.
So that's a really interesting point. I'm really curious to understand, what was the reaction, particularly of the newer members of the team, to hearing stories like that? Did they kind of, is it like, wow, we're actually, it's more than just basketball?
It is. And I think the one thing, like my message last night to the new players is that, reflect on what you've done to get here, because it's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hard work. Thank those that helped you to get along the way, all the parents and grandparents and aunties and uncles that drop you off at training, your first ever coach. I think that's the one thing that whenever something big happened in my career, you think of that first coach that helped you form a layup and to be able to learn how to shoot a jump shot and all those things. I really tried to say that we've all been there. We've all been so nervous. My first ever game for the Opals was when I was 18. It was 2002. I went to China and I said that I was in front of about 7,000 Chinese fans, whereas tonight you're on home soil and you're going to be in front of people that care and love you. So just embrace it, take it all in, and you can, everyone gets so emotional about it. And of course, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be all those things, but excitement. And once you touch that basketball for the first time, all those things go away, and it's just, you do what you've learnt and just try and enjoy yourself.
And I want to play a clip that we got with Steph Reid. And this clip is a different perspective on the Opals, and I'd like to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, I think just after last year and moving overseas and just being around a different environment, I wanted to enjoy my basketball. I think, I've really taken for granted a bit how short our careers can be, and my newfound perspective is just to really enjoy the process. So, this group is a bunch of my friends, and how awesome I get to play in the green and gold with my friends. Like how I feel like that's such a privilege and an honor. So I just don't want to take anything for granted. Like I just want to enjoy the game of basketball, and I feel like that's helping me perform a lot better because I'm a lot less stressed about it, to be honest. So yeah, just playing a bit more free and enjoying the process.
So I'm really curious about that one, because it seems like it's a really important asset to being an Opal. You play with your friends, you compete against them in the WNBL, but you are friends, and then you're representing your country with your friends. What's that like? Because, you've obviously experienced that.
Yeah, I had a sort of very mixed thing that my first ever team that I played in, I was more playing with my idols, and because I was so young, so I was playing with Trish Fallon, Jay Kingy, so that was a really big element of wanting to learn off them, but having this like looking up to them and just being inspired by them and what you can take in. But I was very fortunate that one of my dear friends, she's Holly Florence now, Holly Grimer. She wasn't originally in the squad when I started training with the Opals, but then she quickly came into it, and we actually got to go on that first tour together, and that was pretty cool. The fact that, the two of us went to the AIS together, we're born a few days apart, same height. She's got a lot bigger arm span than me. I was you're supposed to have the same arm span as you do height, and mine's actually quite a lot shorter, which was always good for clothes and wearing good jumpers to fit. But with those rebounding and things like that, I missed a fraction, all those extra rebounds that I could have got. But, to have her alongside you is really special, because she's the one person that you can sort of confide in, and you feel more comfortable in to have those conversations, because trying to talk to those older players, you just get nervous because you just have idolized them and you grow up just wanting to be like them, and then you're playing with them. So that's intimidating. But over the time, you realize that Opal's culture is, you have to be united. You have to, you don't always have to be best friends, but you always have to respect each other and have that good friendship. And so along the way, being able to, now I can say that, Rachel Spawn's one of my really close friends. We're 16 years apart. Yeah. And you go through that, she's your mentor, and then you just, what you get to do, and you strive together doing things. And we talk about it all the time. Leading up to the Athens Olympics, no one ever really knows what we had to go through to make that team. And if you go to a place in Adelaide that's called the Uni Loop, and we used to have to, do 800-metre sprints. It was like they wanted to see how fit you were, and the two of us, we had to run together. And I always used to say, if it wasn't for her, I would have never got as fit. And she's like, well, if it wasn't for you, we were chasing each other. And that's what you have to go through to be able to then make a team. And the memories shared and all the hard work and the blood, sweat and tears, it becomes an amazing bond.
Yeah, and, because we hear people say the Opal sisterhood a lot. And it sounds like one of those glib throwaway lines. But to hear the way you've just described it, it's like, it's not. It's real, and it's something tangible to everybody who's ever pulled on the green and gold for the Opals.
Yeah, it is. And I think, last night, Rachel Spawn, she showed, she was there with me handing out singlets, and she showed an old video clip that was literally recorded on a camcorder of what the Opals, we didn't have social media, we did not have phones when I started, we didn't have the internet, so you had to create your own fun. And so they did this talent night where they all had to dress up and it was in China at the time, and they're all up on stage in these crazy costumes and singing to a tune of something. And I think those bonds really, they connect you. And last night we stayed around for dinner, and then afterwards it sort of brought back memories, the girls hanging out playing cards together, and it's a lot of banter. You try not to talk about too much basketball during that time, because otherwise, it does get all consuming, and there's times when you have to focus on your basketball, and that's at training. But yeah, it literally is a special bond. And tonight we will, with the Players Association, we're handing out some more pendants with past Opals and when you get in the same room with them, and it's been, some of them you might not have seen for 10 years or even longer, but it's sort of time flies and all those memories come back, and everyone might look a little bit older, but you've still got that shared memory.
Getting sellout crowds, pretty special. Getting these TV ratings, I mean, it's just going off the charts. So now it's like, obviously, new CBA coming in. How can we continue to grow this game?
For sure. And then obviously some recent Liberty news when you talk about the TV deals, extending the local deal with Fox 5. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Fox 5, Paul. It's the local tri-state area network, which reaches over 7.5 million households in the New York tri-state area. So this has been an ongoing thing where now the Liberty are able to be in multiple households in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And they recently had over 129% growth year over year in terms of the local coverage. So that just shows you how much, fans are flocking to the New York Liberty and just how much the process has grown.
I just want to jump in and ask a question about this, because the growth, when we're looking at it from here in Australia, the growth that the WNBA and particularly the audience that's been coming to Liberty games has been a huge change. And I suppose I'm putting this to both of you. Did anybody expect at the beginning of last season that you were going to see that amount of growth and attention over the period of the season?
Oh, 100%. You could feel it the year before. I think everyone was looking, they started calling us the super teams. We haven't done anything. Well, they call us a super team. The media, I'm like, yeah, gosh, here we go. No pressure there. Because we're putting these new players together and they still have to take time to be cohesive. And we lost against Vegas, but you could already feel it. There's a rivalry going on. And then obviously in college, the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese players, these amazing players are coming in and they just continue to elevate us. Now, this league's been great for so long. Lauren Jackson's, Elisa Leslie's, the Cheryl Swoops. I mean, so many great players that have started this league, and and that's they're part of the journey that allowed us to get we are today. And I think it's just the right time. It is the right time. I think we've got the best players in the world. We've got really great ownership. We're becoming more and more professional. More eyes on it. We talked about the media growth. I mean, just what we can do in New York and we are a New York team. We're not a Brooklyn team. We're a New York team. And that's how we sell it. So we're playing for all of New York. And it's crazy. I could be in Manhattan, which is obviously not near Brooklyn, and be recognized, which it blows my mind. And and it's cool. And I'm sure our players on a whole different level. But I mean, that's, and it's not about that. It certainly isn't for me, but for finally to get some recognition that we deserve, I think that's pretty cool. And the players are, they have their own shoe deals, they have everything. But I think we could feel it the year before, Alf. I don't know what you were thinking, but obviously when you start winning, everyone loves a winner, Paul. That certainly helps. And then we've got all these stars coming in and, the social media, the NBA guys are watching us. So I think their support certainly helps us as well. So, I just think a lot of great things at the same time. And the level of play, the game changes, it evolves, and these players are just continue to evolve, and it's a fun style to play. I just think everything just came together, and obviously Caitlin Clark came in too, and that certainly helped too. But I think we've got so many great players, and people are recognizing how special this league is.
To follow up what Sandy said, Paul, I think the growth was there. And especially, I think to me, where it really hit me the most was the draft. It was the first time in a long time the WNBA had fans in an actual venue for the draft. And, it was loaded. It was packed. And just to hear how so many fans reacted after pick, and just seeing how much collaboration there was in that building, I think that was a sign like, okay, people are really invested in this product. And on the New York level, to confirm what Coach Brondello says, you can be in Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx, and you'll see someone with a Liberty jersey or a Liberty hat, and you can just strike up a conversation with them because they really, truly believe in this team. And it's obviously like when you bring in the stars like Brianna Stewart and Jonquil Jones, people know who they are. And they have those lofty expectations. But then when you see the product on the court, you see the versatility of a Brianna Stewart, you see the interior defense of Jonquil Jones and what she can do also offensively. People really gravitate to that. And, when you look at the ticker tape parade, to hold it in Manhattan in the middle of the week, and so many people in New York come out to that, and you really see like, okay, no, people truly do care about this product.
That's great. And we're hoping that this is going to help grow the WNBL here as well, with the rising interest and also the players that we've got going from Australia to play in the WNBA. I suppose one of the things I do want to talk about here, Sandy, is the number of opals who are in the WNBA. From your perspective as a coach, how do you find that's going to help you with being able to sort of, I suppose, strengthen your connections with those players?
Yes, strengthen my connections with those players, because if they're in the WNBA, I can get to see them more regularly, and I don't have to call them on the phone or message them all the time. I think that's great. But really, they will become better players by playing against the best players. Just having that opportunities. But at the same time, it says a lot about how good they are. Obviously Australia is by far the second most players from a country, but it truly is a global game, and I think it's great. I had some players, Ali, do you think I can make a training camp? Yes, I do think you could make a training camp. I wish it could be with the Opals, but this is a dream for many too. Everyone, you want to play for the Opals, and I think I love that. But this is their careers too. So to play in the best league in the world, I think it's great, and that so many players have these opportunities. And it's going to strengthen their individual. It's going to give them a great life experience, but they're going to become better players. So in turn, who's that help? That helps the WNBL and the Opals program.
A question I have for you, Coach Brondello. When you talk about, especially this visibility, when you look at some of the younger crop of Opals, when you look at players like a Jade Melbourne and players who can be in that system like a Nadia Potch or Isabel Bourlaise, that are also potential WNBA players, Jade Melbourne playing for the Mystics, the Dream have the rights to Potch and Bourlaise. For the younger generation that now can see like, oh, wait a minute, these are younger players that are doing it, and I can possibly be an Opal one day, and especially as that visibility grows. What are your thoughts on that just culminating together, especially for the younger audience?
Well, I think it's good. I mean, I was on a call the other day, and the most important thing is if you can see it, you can be it. Now they're seeing, Jade Melbourne, 21, the starting point guard of the Opals. Even she was like going, oh, what? Here we go. No, you've earned this. And you deserve it. Now you're going to keep getting better. It's a part of it. But these young players, anything is possible. You have to dare to dream. It's not about an age thing. I mean, some players, obviously, Semi was a late bloomer, but look how good she's playing now. I mean, MVP of the WNBL. It's the best season I've seen her play. Now, she's had great seasons, but she was on another planet this year. And look, we've just got these young players with these opportunities that are going to certainly help them just elevate their game and to be able to earn a really good career from playing a game that is our passion. It's a game that we love.
And I just want to touch on something here. You said it, 21-year-old Jade Melbourne starting point guard. I find that really jarring, not because of her age, but we've been watching her for so long here in Australia that when you say that, it's kind of like, oh, yeah. And look at how long we've been watching her and what she's achieved. Are there any athletes that you've sort of got an eye on that are at that, that when we first started to notice Jade age, that you're sort of going, hey, there's something special here?
Yeah, look, I think Jade was, special. She was in the Opals program for a few years and she'd really, I loved her. She gives me energy, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I'm old now, but she keeps it light and fun, but she's a real competitor and I love that. And she's just out there and, obviously unlucky to not make the World Cup team. But then 2 years later, she's starting for it and it's putting in the hard work. Greatness comes from, confidence, but you just got to work really hard. It's not always just the most talented is going to be the best player. It's great if they have talent, but who's going to work really hard? But, Jade's up there. Another thing you have to remember too, Paul, Ezzy McBegor is, I believe, 25.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And she's been to 2 Olympics. So she's still young in my eyes. That's how I look at it now. So we got Jade, obviously, Alf talked about Izzy Bourlaise, still young. Nadia, these players, I think, with the game, how the game's evolving really suit the style of play. I think we talk about we want to have pace and space, and these players could really, play and, what the vision of what I think we can be for the Opals and how really it's how we play in the WNBA. We talk about being positionless and having versatility and still being hard-nosed defensively, but that we've got some really great young talent coming through. Obviously, Georgia Moore in she's not so young, but she's in college. She's finishing in college too, but she's had a really great college career and she's going into the pros. But we've got young kids back in the WNBL too. They've got the World Cup this year, so always keeping an eye on that talent there. But I think when you're putting an Opals program together, I think we had 5 first-time Olympians in Paris. That's a lot. But we had a good mixture of experience too, and I think that obviously to get the best out of your teams, you need that. You've got the youth, the younger players, but also the experience, the veterans, and that have been there, done that before, because that's a part of it. And then it's just putting all the right pieces together. I think the next 4 years looks pretty exciting, considering like Jade Melbourne and all those other players I spoke about are quite young. And another player that I haven't really spoken about too much right now is Alana Smith. Now, obviously, she's closer to 30. But she's had a lot of injuries, and really this is her time for the Opals too. And you saw how her elevated play with the Minnesota Lynx this year, just gone to another level. So really happy with her development as well.
Through that season, just kind of for those who maybe weren't following along as closely, can you just walk us through what that season looked like?
Okay, so pre-season, one of our vice captains, MC, unwell with illness, couldn't get there until like the first week of the season, and she was still recovering, so she didn't play the first like 2 or 3 games. In the first game, 2 minutes in, Morgan breaks her wrist. Did deserve it. She's had a horrible injury run. So we're down 2 of our like starting 5. But then again, like it's happened to me before where players in my position have become injured and I've gotten the opportunity to play. So the likes of like Paz Hokianga and Jade Kirisomi and Kaylee Smiler and Eva Langton get more court time. So that's really cool for them. It was a good immediate start. We won our first game by 20 points against the Polkai, but then we lost 5 in a row, as I said before. We had a really close game against the Queens where we were down by 20 and we brought it back to lose by 2. After that 7th game, when we had, I think it was Morgan and MC come back at the same time. And it was just like, not that it was night and day, but that like leadership and that experience and that IQ that the older girls have kind of really helped carry us through the rest of the season.
Yeah. Can I ask a question about this? Because this is one of the things I'm curious about with the Rapid League. You start the season, you lose a couple of players, you've got bench players who have to step up to fill those positions in the starting 5. Yet you've also got to put players on the floor for the Rapid League. In those few weeks, how did that affect the team? And I don't mean psychologically, but I mean physically, because you're effectively playing 2 games in a night.
I mean, God, I don't know how like players like Jade and Pally who played the whole Rapid League game and then would put in big minutes for our Tauihi game. I don't know how they did it. But I mean, at the end of the day, that honestly just made them better. And at trainings, you have those trainings where you would do like your starting 5 versus like the rest of the team, and they would beat us. And I'm like, well, shit, like they're doing really well because they're playing not that it's harder, but like they're playing this rapid game and then having to play the Tauihi game. And I think it's a really cool concept, although it was definitely taxing physically because you'd come out of the rapid game, you'd go straight into our warm-up, and then you'd be the first sub in. I think it was a huge like help for us as a whole team. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, there's that Rapid League element that came on it. So then we're all putting in extra court time. Like say, and if some injuries happen, the responsibilities reshuffle a little bit. So then suddenly you're playing Rapid and then you're playing the main game, and I'm sure because by the end, I mean, it's so much fun to watch, but I gotta imagine y'all are so tired by the end of it. And so, you have to that. And then going plus the Final 4 where those games are, they can be pretty close. And so, like you just listed through, you guys have been through all that. But something that always stood out to me was the team dynamic and the culture in the locker room. So can you just talk a little bit about your teammates and how that all just kind of worked? Because it just seemed like it all was just a perfect storm, when you were together.
I think what it really came down to was we were just ultra competitive at training and on the court. But then off the court, it was just silly. Like, it was just fun and games the whole time. Nothing was ever, like, too serious. So we had 3 houses that our imports lived in, people who didn't come from New Zealand. And, like, often we'd have, like, team dinners, and there are a few of us that really were into board games and, like, playing cards. So we'd always be hanging around each other. Going to the beach until like 9 o'clock at night because the sun doesn't set, which is like my dream. So yeah, it was just, you've really got to have that balance. But I think we found a lot of respect for one another because like I said before, we kind of went at it at training and we didn't really care who was in front of us. And then off the court, it was just love. So, yeah.
So it seemed like a perfect balance. And I do want to put you out too, because right at the end of the season, there was a very sweet video of you being honored for your graduation. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
It's so nice team to have that family around you, even though you weren't able to go back.
Oh, it was so cool. Like, I remember talking with Alex about going back to Rockhampton for my graduation, and he really wanted me to go, but it just wouldn't work out. We had a game at Dunedin and the flights weren't working, so couldn't do it. And then I didn't know that was happening. Like, I don't know if you could tell, but I was pretty shocked. Yeah, and then to have like everyone kind of there to support. Like, our S&C guy Croft came from wherever he lived and just was there to see it, and I was like, oh guys, it's so nice. Like, it was so cool. It really just melted my heart and kind of, I don't know, it made me care more. You know what I mean? Like, when people do those things for you and you're like, oh my God, they care about me for more than what I'm here for. Like, I'm not just a basketball player. Like, this is a huge thing in my life, and the fact that they saw that like for what it was to me and they celebrated it, it was really awesome.
It's not a surprise because you have been very highly regarded amongst the Whai crew and around the league. And well, I'm going to read something from your coach because I told him we were doing this and I asked him for a quote, and I can guarantee you it's amazing. Yes, it was a real pleasure to coach Lara this season. She was the perfect forward for our system. She allowed us to be aggressive in the pick and roll, and her ability to run the floor was second to none in the league. Lara was also super professional and always showing up early to do some extra work. And she is a high character person, funny, caring, selfless, the ultimate teammate. I honestly can't say enough good things about her. She was our anchor this season for sure.
Wow, that's really nice. Thanks, Alex.
Shout out, Alex.
Yeah.
Because you are that high character person, they can see really no surprise when you say, they value you, because you also show up and value them. And you contributed so much during that. And so, you played a big role in Memphis. Watching you in the final game, especially, was a lot of fun. I gotta say, when I was like standing up, like, "Go Spats!"
Love that.
I'm not to be shy about it anymore.
No bias here.
Yeah, just no bias at all, I promise. Even though everyone's looking at me, I was like, I know. But watching you just come alive and help make that win happen. So was there a point in that game that you guys just kind of knew as a team that, never say never, anything could happen? Was there a point that you guys just kind of knew and were confident that, what, this is going to be our time?
I think we went into the game knowing that we had the momentum and that we could beat them. But I mean, just the week before, they were down 20 to the Polkai and then beat them. So at halftime, we were like, guys, we can't have a Polkai situation. Like, we need to keep the foot on the throat and keep going. But yeah, the way that Alex coaches is everyone has the green light and everyone has to do everything with confidence because he thinks that we're the best in the league, which we are now. But it was probably like at halfway through the third and going into the fourth, we just need to keep doing what we're doing and we don't need to stress. Like, yeah, I mean, it's hard when you're not playing on your home court, and like, credit to the Queens, like, they're a freaking tough team, but I think we could kind of see it in them that they not had given up, but they just didn't look like the team that they had been. Yeah,
it just kind of all breaks down toward the end sometimes.
Yeah.
And who ends up, just shows up best on the day. And honestly, I don't think there was a solid, I couldn't pick either one. At the beginning.
Right.
I talked to a lot of people in the stands, of course, they have their home team that they root for, but still, and I told like both sides, they were just like, anything could happen, but we're just, we're here for the basketball, and we got a freaking good game out of it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. That was the whole season though, right? Because like, you only have 5 teams and it's really just whoever can pull it together. Like, everyone would have said Kahu would have won it, but I mean, yeah. Anyway.
One of the things that's interesting about the women's series is you literally travel the world. There's competitions, there's tournaments everywhere.
There are.
I'm kind of curious, how challenging is that as a coach, and how challenging is it for the team to sort of be, because it's a pretty dense schedule.
I mean, not every team goes to every stop.
Sure.
I guess. The stops, though, for us, I mean, Australia's far away.
Yeah.
So we roll in, we've got limited preparation, like on the ground. So we do what we can. And then, it's you're in battle. 2 games on the first day. If you don't win, you're probably not playing on the second day. And the second day will be 3 games, and the turnaround time might be so short. Like, you really do need to put some time into the prep as best you can. But sometimes these rosters, you might not have seen one of the girls all that frequently before, or maybe it's the first time those 4 girls have played together. So it comes with all sorts of adversities on that front.
Yeah.
Players need to be willing to be dynamic. They need to be willing to troubleshoot on the fly. So as a coach, you present them with some tools, but when they're out there, your resilience is on display. Their ability to work.
Look, that's really true. I mean, there's been games that we've watched over the last couple of years where the Gangurrus have been down, and you look at the scoreline, you look at the intensity of the way the game's been playing, it's like, how are they going to challenge that gap? And they do. And it's like, it's great to watch, because you're seeing the skills, you're seeing the resilience, as you've mentioned, and you're seeing really that teamwork, because you only got 4 people. So you really get to see how they work together to be able to achieve those results.
For sure. So the chemistry of the group, the character of the individuals in that group is going to be critical to its success. No one's getting buried on a bench. All 4 players have a pivotal role to play. They've all got to be on the same page. You might have a game plan. It's not working. And you don't have, as the coach, the luxury of a quick timeout. Hey, we'll reassess that. Now let's do it this way. The players need to solve that problem themselves. So that's about their basketball IQ, but their willingness, I think, to work together as a group. And to your point, you're down 7 with however long to go. Like, teams don't quit. But I could probably say that about all teams. But the Gangurrus as a group have proven a level of resilience over the years, even with different generations of the group. But that resilience and grit and fight are guaranteed out of the Gangurrus, I think.
I think that's probably one of the key takeaways. In fact, I was watching, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, but I was watching one of the games, and the commentators, one of the things that actually I watched a few of the games again, and they kept talking about the resilience of the team and the grit and the fight that the Gangurrus always bring to a game.
Yep.
And so obviously it's become such a key thing for the team, and it's now being recognised by, the people that are calling the games as well, that it's almost become the calling card for the team.
Oh, absolutely. They will fight it out. There's never a question of that when we're talking about, did they try hard enough? Are we ready to go? They're ready to go.
Yeah.
They will be ready to go. And I think, when you're trying to put together teams for this kind of sport, that is a key element of character of people that would form any said group.
And to that point, that must make it really tough to select a team, particularly if you're in a position where, you've had, say, 4 players who are regularly playing together.
Yep.
And then for whatever reason, one of them is unavailable for a series or for whatever reason.
Yep.
Being able to find somebody who's not only just looking for the skills, but you're also looking for someone who can integrate in with the team and fit in, which must make it, from the point of view of selection, a real challenge.
Yes, is the short answer. Like, fitting into that group, and the Olympic 4 have done a lot together.
Yeah.
And so building the depth of the group is important for Basketball Australia's success. And so it's by identifying personalities, athletes, attributes they're going to complement that group, and eventually over time it will evolve, but you want to initially complement, and I guess getting the right formula is critical, because adding a component that isn't going to fit well, even socially, like it can really upset the balance of the performance. So, so far we've got a great squad of about 10, 12 at the moment. I think diversity in that space is inevitable, but it's about identifying those right people. It's not necessarily, people talked about America. Was it Cameron Brink does her knee, and so she doesn't go away with that team? Like, oh, well, we'll just get Caitlin Clark in.
Yeah, no.
She hasn't played any 3x3. She's not part of that group. And so it's not as simple as just plucking out whoever you think the next best WNBL player is. They need to have some attributes that are going to complement the team.
Yeah, and again, going back to, like, I was looking at the upcoming schedule. It's like, in 2 weeks it's Hong Kong, and then a couple of weeks after that it's Canada. It's like, it's this constant cycle.
Yeah.
So, having a team that's traveling on that sort of a schedule, spending obviously a lot of time together,
yes,
got to make sure that the personalities really, really click and really fit together. Otherwise, just that time together could end up actually having a negative effect.
Yes, and you're going to be in the trenches. Like, something will go wrong, and maybe you lose a game, and you're going to have to play again against a better opposition in 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's not enough time to go back and watch the whole game, and maybe you've got to be able to regroup. What went wrong? How are we going to fix it? Right, we're straight in and work together to solve that problem now.
Yeah.
There's no, well, next weekend, or we'll have film on Monday, we'll do a shoot around on Tuesday. We're back at it in less than an hour.
I suppose the other part to this is, you just mentioned, things go wrong, and they always they do. And I think probably one of the ones that surprised a lot of people watching would have been the game against the Netherlands, because the team had gone unbeaten in that first round, came up against the Netherlands, and I don't think anybody was really expecting the game to go the way it did. Certainly not, as a viewer watching the game. But I don't want to take away anything from the Netherlands. They were a tough team, and
they won it.
They won it. But watching the Gangurrus play against them, despite the gap, nobody gave up right down to the last dying seconds. It was go, go, go. And I think in a lot of cases, the Dutch defense actually was forcing us to kind of hurry some shots, because there were stretches there where the honest truth was we couldn't buy a bucket.
Look, I guess those days come up, right? And think about, we've spent 2 weeks away.
Yep.
No excuses. The girls, and as you pointed out, there's no quitting in the Gangurrus. Like, it's just no quitting. But we win the women's series, right? So we lost the USA, and then we find ourselves playing against them again in the final, and we beat them, and we win. Awesome. Then there's a couple of days off, and then we're straight into the World Cup. And depends how you want to frame it, but we're undefeated except for 1-L against the team that won the whole thing. But performance that day, when you watch that game back, and I might have watched it at least a few times, we'll call it, we can play better than that. I think we, probably not our best. They played well. So they played, I think, when you watch the Netherlands games, that was, one of their better games probably for the series. And of late, I've been watching them a bit with the women's series games as well. I think we just didn't have a good day. They played some excellent defense.
Yeah.
And it was smothering. And so despite our endeavors, we'll go back to the drawing board, find ways to conquer and combat the way they were managing our pick and roll, how they were getting available on the pick and roll themselves, and we'll be better. If we play them again the next day, would the outcome be the same? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's
right. Will we win? Maybe not. That's the best team in the world. So, they are the World Cup champions. So I don't want to be perceived as taking away from that. But yeah, I think we would walk away from that being a little disappointed with.
Oh, sure. And again, I've watched it a few times. And one of the things that I noticed, because I was one of the games, I just listened to the commentary through it, and they picked up an interesting point, which, to be honest, I suppose I kind of noticed it in the back of my head, but really didn't get it brought forward until I heard them say it by listening, was that the Dutch, on a number of occasions, rather than going for the rebound, would kick it out, which gave them an opportunity. Even though we got the ball back, it gave them an opportunity to reset their defence. And the commentary team actually said they've done that quite a few times early up in the game. So obviously I stopped and rounded back and had a look. It was like, yeah, they did. So, it's almost like there's a whole bunch of new strategies that are being built around 3x3, and it's still evolving in terms of how people play the game.
For sure. And Australia, we're still young in our experience with 3x3, and Basketball Australia, there's been a lot of planning meetings, a lot of, what will next year look like? What is the road to the Olympics? So there's a lot of growth in that space and genuine investment from key players at Basketball Australia to help make that better. When you look at the experience even of our Olympic 4 and Damon, that group, because there was no funding, that group's progress to the Olympics is incredible. And now we've got this extra depth of resource, and we've got these 4 girls that have Olympic experience. So they've done it the hard way. So the evolution of the way the Gangurrus are going to play on the back of the success of those 4 and then the groups before them I think will be exponential. But the game itself, as you say, is evolving, and we've just got to get our experience levels up, get the diversity of player up, and we'll be right there.
Well, yeah,
we are there.
We are right there. Having a good broadcast deal and a good quality ongoing broadcast will also mean that there's going to be more eyeballs on the game. If there's more eyeballs, there's more people looking at it as potential for sponsorship. Because, look, let's be honest, I think in terms of value for money for sponsorship, I think the WNBL is one of the great opportunities for businesses to get involved in sports sponsorship without having to outlay absurdly high amounts of money. There's ways to get in at a fairly reasonable price for some smaller businesses, right, which will help raise their profile. So that means, if that happens, there's a recognition of the value for money for being able to sponsor a WNBL team. Now, if the league is going to put in that sort of marketing effort, I can't see any reason why they won't, and putting in, the time and effort to develop a great product for broadcast and increase the level of broadcast quality, then I think what we're going to find is that there's some real opportunities for this to be a great way to help the clubs indirectly, right, without actually giving them like a cash handout. It's a way to be able to help the clubs go. But then the other part to it is that the clubs have to start looking at, we've got to find people who can engage sponsors
100%.
And that's where, some clubs are going to have to, some clubs do it really well, but some clubs are going to have to lift their game in terms of engaging with potential sponsors, going out there and beating the bushes to see who's out there in terms of potential sponsors. And you know what? It may not be that a club's going to get one really significant, I'll just use this as an example. You're not going to go out and get a Jayco. You may end up having 2 or 3 sponsors who are providing significant input, significant financial input to the team, rather than having one really big sponsor. But then, and I'll talk about this for a second because, with the Flames, we got to know Lee Hadjipantelis from Brighton's Lawyers. I had him on the pod as well. And one of the things he said was really, really important for him was the relationships. So that means that the clubs themselves are going to have to work on developing relationships with their sponsors and build relationships with potential sponsors who may not be in a position to come in this year, but maybe in a position to come in next year or the year after. But you've got to cultivate those relationships. You've got to grow them. You've got to show them the love so that they're willing to come in. And I think some teams, like I said, some teams do really well, but I think some teams are going to have to really lift their game in that space.
Yeah, I just kind of feel it's a sink or swim moment for the clubs. And I just honestly think that maybe some of them won't make it. And, in these articles on Code Sports as well, they've been talking about the groups that are sort of waiting in the wings to come in to the league. We talked, I think last time we talked about the Jack Jumpers and Brisbane, but they're talking like Brisbane are talking about wanting to come in 2026. The Jack Jumpers come in 2027. Neither of them seem super keen to jump in right now and fill that spot that Adelaide may leave. But I think, there are people waiting in the wings. So if maybe one or two of the clubs just go, look, we don't have the nous, the sponsorship dollars, the whatever, to be able to do it, it's good to know that there are people building towards coming in. But it's an existential moment for the league. Like I said before, everyone's talked about it for so long, for 20 years, 30 years, about wanting to be here. So it's really exciting, as we've talked about many times, but it's also, I think there's going to be some heartache. As we're seeing with Adelaide already, you're seeing the sort of outpouring of people like Rachel Spawn and, the Adelaide basketball community in general, that Adelaide is a big part of Australian basketball.
Yep.
But the reality is we might lose an Adelaide team. They might come back in a couple of seasons or whatever, but yeah, it's going to be a bumpy ride.
All right, so let me throw something out, right? And I'm throwing this one out only because Larry Kesselman's is involved in this ownership group as well.
Mm-hmm.
There were, the model that the NBL has used is that the league itself would set up a team.
Mm-hmm.
They'd go out there to look for investment, to come in for a small percentage at whatever the dollars were. And we know that this has caused consternation, because then everybody's sort of complaining, but Larry owns everything and he owns every team. But it's grown the league.
Yeah.
So the question is, and I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. Do you think that it's a potential that maybe the ownership group of the WNBL itself might turn around and say, you know what, maybe the smart thing for us to do is to stand up a team.
Yeah. Almost like your seed funding.
Yeah. So let's stand up a team and then go out to market and basically say, here's a team, right? Yeah. It's going to run for 12 months. Now, we want to, do you want to come in for 20%, 30%, whatever it is that they want to sell, and then say, and you've got first option to buy out the rest when you go up to whatever it is.
Yeah.
I could see that being a potential.
Yeah. And it sounds like, without knowing the intricacies of how it all works, it sounds like that's what Larry did in the beginning. Like, he had ownership in several clubs to get them started. And then, of course, this big hostile takeover thing's all reared its head in the last few months. And now he's selling his percentage in all those teams. But I don't think you can deny that he put his money where his mouth is and got the whole thing going. And the NBL is in an amazing place at the moment. The irony of all of that stuff in the NBL is that the guy that's doing all the stirring, he hasn't run his club at a profit for quite a few years. But yeah, that makes me nervous too. It's exciting that there's going to be big money involved, but you love not just the WNBL, but you love sport as much as I do. The stories you hear about billionaires and, coming in, buying teams, throwing their weight around, getting the shits and walking out, all that sort of makes me nervous too. I'm getting too old and cautious.
and look, there is another thing that they have to be careful to kind of walk a fine line too. One of the things that's really special about the WNBL is its connectedness to its fan base. The signings on the court. Canberra does that well. Other teams do it well. After a game, they'll sit there and they'll sign things. And I'm going to use a different sport as an example here. So many, many years ago, you could go to see motorsport. So the old Australian Touring Car Championship. You go to places like, and I'm going to show my age here, Amaroo Park and Oran Park.
and you used to be able to buy a paddock pass. So, when you arrived, it's like, do you want a regular ticket or do you want a paddock pass? Okay, I'll take a paddock pass. You could walk through the paddock and you'd be rubbing shoulders with people like Alan Grice and Jim Richards and Peter Brock and, just
that's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And that made touring cars really special because there was that connectedness. It's become professional now. And, it's become... there's this separation. Yeah, the gates go up. There's this separation. And I understand the fear, but I also think the ownership and management of the WNBL are very aware of the fact that it's different. It's different to the NBL.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain parts to it that make it special and make it really connect with the fans. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out.
It's interesting talking about that. We've got the next episode of our Hoops and Dreams series coming out next week on WNBL Pulse, and we were very fortunate to talk to a very big name in Australian women's basketball. And we actually talked about this because the entire premise of that series is, what do we want to see out of the new league? And this is someone very experienced, has played all over the world. And she said one of the things that players have to do is be part of this growth and be part of the engagement with fans, the engagement with sponsors, because historically there's been players that just go, no, I'm here to play basketball. I don't want to do any of that, meeting sponsors and bloody kids signing autographs and going out to schools and things like that. And this person was adamant that is crucial. And she's experienced that all over the world. You need that level of engagement with your fans, with your sponsors. You don't have to give up your entire privacy and stuff, but you've got to put working off the court. And you touched on the Capitals. It's something the Capitals have always done really, really well. It's something that players like Mariana Tolo and Kelsey Griffin are still doing really, really well. Their involvement wasn't just a Capitals thing. They go to Bendigo, they do the same thing. And I think that's really crucial. That's a big, as you said, it's a really important part of our league, and you've really got to hold on to it.
There are really great examples of that. I know one of the things that really, really amazed me down in Canberra, the last couple of games that we came to in Canberra, was Jade Melbourne would put in, as she always does, 125%.
Yep.
At the end of the game, she'd be there sitting there and she wouldn't get off that chair signing until everybody who wanted to see her had got their, whatever it was, shirt, poster, ball, whatever, autographed.
And just quietly, the same kids, week in, week out, showing the same shirt, and she just never complains.
Yeah.
She's absolutely amazing at it. But you're right. That's the stuff that you make that connection. You make the fans feel like they are part of the process.
Yep.
It's a small thing to do, and I'm no doubt after games, even Jade Melbourne, and I know Lauren Jackson used to do this till the cows come home as well. She'd just sit there and sign everything. You've had a loss. You might have individually had a bad game. The last place in the world you want to be is sitting on that court signing autographs.
Oh, yeah.
But, those players get it. It's really something I hope sticks around and is still seen as precious in this new league going forward.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get our latest pod. And we really appreciate if we could get a like and a review so we can extend the reach to more listeners. And don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn.